Hello everybody, my name is Matthew Perkins from MatthewPerkins.net, and this is an animated recap of episode 6 of Critical Role. So if you haven't seen that episode yet, spoilers ahead, that's your warning. Alright, let's go! By the way, for one lucky critter, I am gifting a Critical Role Twitch subscription, so watch to the end to find out how you can win. Overall, this episode might appear a little bit slow, but it had its own explosive revelations. It came off the back of episode 5, when the party slew Duggar, the gooey, slimy dwarf that had killed their friend Bertrand. They avenged their friend Bertrand's death. How nice is that? So at the end of that previous episode, they went back to their mate Lord Estros and informed him of what had happened. They collected a bounty for avenging Bertrand's death, and then they went, hey, let's go to the pub. Of course they did. So they went to the Spire by Fire. Ashton, played by Taliesin, orders drinks for everybody in shot glasses, and it's a good fun. But Imogen asks, hey, can we move to a quieter place? Because she has her psychic energy, and she picks up all kinds of brain signals from everyone around her, and she finds it quite painful to be in a crowded space. I feel the same way, Imogen, but I call it just being a terminal introvert. When they get to a more secluded place at the Spire by Fire Tavern, Ashton suggests they play kind of a getting to know you game called What the Hell's Up With That? Now the rules of this game are pretty simple. It's pretty much just rollies. Everybody rolls a d20, and the highest number, the person that rolls the highest number, gets to ask the person with the lowest number a single question, and they have to answer it, right? That's the rules of the game. Now the weird thing about this is canonically, this proves that the characters in this D&D campaign all carry around with them 20-sided dice. Because of course they do. That's how you play rollies, right? So here are all the questions that are asked in this getting to know you game, sitting around this table. Laudna asks Dorian, hey, you seem to come from wealth because of your fancy clothes. What the hell's up with that? And Dorian reveals, well, his family actually comes from wealth. And no, he's not necessarily a prince, but he is a noble. He's like the second in line of succession for a wealthy family out there somewhere in the world. Fern asks Ashton, hey, have you ever been in love before? What the hell's up with that? And Ashton says, I don't know if I've been in love before. I've had friends. I had a friend group that I loved called the Nobodies, and we all grew up with each other, but they all left town. Fresh Cut Grass asks Fern a bunch of questions that she can't answer for some reason. He asks her, firstly, do you have any regrets in your life? What are your regrets? And she kind of dances around it. So then he asks, oh, so what did you come to town to do? And Fern says, we came to town to meet a friend of Orum's. Oh no, I'm not very good at answering questions. So then Fresh Cut Grass asks a third question and says, how does it feel when you steal something? When Fern answers, she says, it's not just the taking that's exciting. It's not just the stealing. It's the having. She likes having these trinkets. She has a bedroom back on the Feywild where she lives with her grandmother, and she keeps all her trinkets there. She's been in Exandria, like in the material plane, for 7 months. I just did 10. That's not the number. It's this many. That's 7. Laudna asks Imogen, hey, how do you feel about giving up your father's name to the Hallbork Corsairs? Because you recall in the previous episode, the Hallbork Corsairs asked for collateral. Hey, who's somebody in your life that's important to you? Because if you betray us, we're going to go find them and probably do something not great to them. So that's what Laudna's inquiring about. And Imogen answers, look, I feel nervous, right? I feel nervous, but my father and my home is a fair distance away in a place called the Tayland Highlands, right? The Tayland Highlands. And she's got a pretty good feeling about the Hallbork Corsairs, and she's usually correct in her feelings about people. Ashton says to Aurum, hey, why are you in town? What is your mission here? And Aurum says, I represent the Ashari. I'm here on a fact-finding mission. Now, I'll remind you that from Campaign 1, Keyleth, the character of Keyleth the Druid, she grew to lead the Ashari. So this character from Campaign 1 is currently leading this organization and this peoples that Aurum is currently representing, right? So he's meant to come here for fact-finding reasons. Someone messed with his home, with his Ashari, and he's here chasing up breadcrumbs that led here. Aurum's not some kind of authority. You know, he's not some kind of authority or leader of the Ashari, but he is like a bodyguard, someone that's charged with protecting the leaders of that organization. And they knew that he was traveling anyway, so they charged him with the task of traveling here and finding out a little bit more about that attack. Aurum asks Fresh Cut Grass, hey, I met someone like you once before in my home. So in general, what are you, right? What are you? Where are you from? Like, how old are you? And Fresh Cut Grass glitches out. He's like, like he's gone. He physically cannot answer that question. It's like that bit of his memory is corrupted or gone or doesn't exist. So Aurum kind of rephrases and says, hey, Fresh Cut Grass, how old are you? And he says, I was with Dancer for 2 years, so I guess that means I'm 2. Right? Man, I'm not good at doing that accent. Australians can't get it done. All right. So then Aurum even asks a further question and says, do you dream? Do you dream? And Fresh Cut Grass answers, no, look, he doesn't dream, but he's going to try. He's going to try dreaming. Man, that's actually quite tragic, isn't it? And here is the part of the episode that I live for, that I die for. I love this, okay? This energy right here, this is what I want to have. Fresh Cut Grass asked Laudna a very telling question. He asked Laudna, are you dead? And I'm going to read from my notes here because I don't want to get this wrong. Laudna answers, I think so. I think I'm a cross between alive and dead. I definitely died, but then I woke up. I woke up amongst some corpses in Whitestone, and I haven't aged. It was 30 years ago. I was human. She has a particularly slow heartbeat, like a single beat per 20 seconds. She says, we were farmers. I always had innate magical powers, which would be, her sorceress origin. But my parents wanted to give me a better life. So they clearly gave her up to the stewards of Whitestone, but they had different plans, the stewards of Whitestones. The stewards of Whitestones being the Briarwoods. The Briarwoods. And Laudna says, yeah, one of the stewards of Whitestones pops into my head every now and then. One of the voices that I hear. Oh, man. As per the rules of whatever this getting to know you game is that Taliesin clearly made up, everybody's been asked a question and now the game's over, I guess. So Dorian plays everybody a song. They even say, play us a song, Prince Dorian. And he plays like a kind of Air Genasi ballad, which is quite nice. But there's a cool moment where Imogen, with her mind-reading powers, probes into Dorian's mind as he's playing. And they roll off to see whether he's able to resist it. And then there's a whispers moment, but it's between Robbie and Laura, right? Robbie walks over and whispers in Laura's ear the truth. That's so lovely. During the getting to know you game, Laudna had been fiddling with like chicken bones and twine and hair and stuff, and she made this kind of like a voodoo doll, like a weird kind of doll that she gave to Dorian and said, hey, it's named Bertrand, and he hates it. He's so creeped out by it, as you should be. As you should be. And here's the start of a running joke that I'm sure is going to come up again. At some point during this evening, Fresh Cut Grass, the robot, had tried to take a shot just to see what happened if he drank something. And he, poured it down his gullet, and he could feel it inside himself, you know what I mean? But at the end of the whole getting to know you game, he goes, well, this is clearly a bad thing. I'm going to get this out of me. I'm just going to turn myself upside down. And so Fern kind of picks up Fresh Cut Grass, this little robot, and lifts him above her head and like turns him upside down and pours the drink out of him and drinks out of him. There's a point later in the episode where they use Fresh Cut Grass as a thermos. Look, there's going to be a lot of moments in this campaign where they drink out of Sam's character. It's just gonna happen, and I just need you to be okay with that. And here's another telling moment with Laudna's character and the Briarwoods. She, in her head that night when they're going to sleep, she hears, careful dear, some things are meant to be secret. And she calls this voice in her head, D, calls her D. D could stand for Delilah Briarwood, who was the necromancer in Campaign 1. Now, there are spoilers for Campaign 1 here, right? I'm about to do a spoiler, so maybe skip ahead 10 seconds if you haven't seen Campaign 1. Delilah Briarwood's dead. They killed her. Like, what's going on? What, is she alive or is she dead? Is she some kind of... She's her patron, right? Delilah Briarwood is definitely Laudna's patron. I'm just stressing out. So Imogen and Laudna have a brief conversation saying, "Ooh, hey, you're talking to your patron. That's full on." And Laudna reveals, "Look, we've argued before, and she's threatened to take away my powers before, but she's never done it." So there's kind of an adversarial relationship here between Laudna and her patron, Lady D. Let's just call her Lady D for now, until it gets 1,000,000% confirmed. The next morning, the party are kind of in the wind. They have so many options, right? They've got so many options. Fresh Cut Grass lays it out. He says, here's what we could do. We have a lead at the academy. We want to go to the academy so that Laudna and Imogen can learn about their magical powers. We could also investigate the fact that floating furniture attacked us in the street in episode 1. We also want to investigate the fact that Broomstone is being smuggled. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? Also, our contact, Lord Estros, our patron, might have work for us. But there's also the Corsairs that we've met. Maybe they have work for us. So we've got 5 options, and they decide to go with this little piggy, the Corsairs. So the party goes to meet the Corsairs, and to meet them, they go to the same creepy place they first met them, and they talk to Yash, the spokesperson for the Corsairs. They say, "Hey Yash, we defeated Duggar, your old associate, right? He's gone, he's dead. But we didn't find any traces of Broomstone in his house, right?" And Yash reiterates that, hey, he doesn't know what Broomstone would have to do with this guy, Duggar, you know? But he admits that Broomstone is something that a lot of people might want, has a lot of uses. It's just tricky to trade in because it's so risky. Dorian hints at the warped nature that Duggar had taken on, saying, "Whatever we saw went deeper than petty crime and smuggling. It was something darker." But because remember, Duggar was like a creepy gelatinous goo boy, but Yash doesn't seem to know much about that. Yash does let on that he has had people from the Corsairs stalking and following the party to track their movements. And Laudna asks, "Are we easy to follow?" And he goes, "Absolutely." Dorian asks, "Hey, do you have a relationship with Lord Estros?" And this, I'll remind you, is the first time they've officially mentioned Lord Estros to the Corsairs. And Yash says, "Look, who hasn't heard of that strange coot?" He suspects that maybe some people say, "Oh, this guy, Lord Estros, might have killed his predecessor, the lady," I forget her name, the lady something. We'll get to it later. It'll come to me later. Or maybe he's a vampire because he's very much a recluse. You know, now that I think about it, this character of Lord Estros reminds me of the lady from Great Expectations. Starts with an H, Lady Haberdash. No, that means hat. Haberdashery? That means... Her name wasn't Lady Haberdashery, but the lady that was a recluse and she set all the clocks to the same time in Great Expectations. Somebody tell me what her name was. But overall, in this whole interaction with the Corsairs, the main thing that I'm taking away from this is that this organization is very much anarcho-cop communist, right? They're anarchists, you know? They don't want the rule of traditional law, you know? They're trying to subvert and displace that kind of stuff. And they're also for the redistribution of wealth. They're taking from the rich. And if someone's too rich, they're not going to trust them. And that's kind of clouding their opinion of Lord Estros because he's a wealthy noble. And these guys, they don't like the rich. And here's where the cast take a break. They take a break, we take a break. Did you know that this episode that you're watching right now costs a little bit of money to make? And if you want to help, I hit my elbow. If you want to help, if you want to help offset these costs just a bit, then you could support me on Patreon. It is super helpful, okay? There are some costs associated with making this stuff, and Patreon offsets those costs. Up there, I've got a bunch of D&D resources if you're a Dungeon Master, specifically for Lost Mine of the Found Elder or Storm King Sunder. My dude, I got you covered. But I've also got like a podcast. It's super cool. But if you don't want to toss me any money, that's fine. Instead, just share this video with a critter that you think might like it. That would help me immensely. Now let's get back to the video. From this point, the party's trying to decide, okay, which avenue should we pursue now? We've already talked to the Corsairs, and they decide as a group, look, let's pursue the Anger, which is the mission that Auram's on. He's on the mission to find the Anger. So Ashton rolls to see, do I know anything about the Anger? And he tells us this little bit of information. There are certain mercenaries out there in the world that seem to make a name for themselves. And historically, in this city, when they're like bar brawls, people would settle them down by saying, hey, be careful, don't get too rowdy. you might rouse the anger, this mercenary that goes around solving problems. But this is a well-traveled person, and this is a rumor, a legend from 20 years ago, because he's since gone from being a mercenary to being a bodyguard, right? A very legendary, old school, old guard adventurer. In pursuit of the anger, Ashton leads the party to his home, the Crook House, which is kind of like the underbelly of this city. And on the way there, they meet Annie, who I think is a half-orc lady who... I think she's half-orc. She's half-orc, right? I'm going to say she's a half-orc. They meet Annie the half-orc, right? This is one of Ashton's friends, and she's an actor living at the Crook House. So they ask her, hey, what do you know about the anger? And she says, well, he's the old guard before my time. He's working for the Loomis twins. He's a bodyguard for them. So now we know that House Loomis, they have the twins, right? They're called the twins. There's a little bit more being revealed here. The party speculate that, hey, well, since Dorian is a noble and he's a bard, he could probably get some kind of audience with the Loomis family. But upon hearing that Dorian is a bard and he's dressed so finely, Annie takes kind of a front with this. She's kind of an aggressive character. And she's like, oh, you're a bard. Like, how good are you? And they end up having like a bard off because Annie pulls out, I crap you not, a fiddle. And she's playing the fiddle. So they have to roll performance checks to kind of bard off against each other. And in this conflict, in this musical conflict, now I think this show might be scripted because Dorian rolls, Robbie rolls 2 natural 20s. How is this possible? This is somehow like the tensest moment in the episode as well. These two people playing music at each other. And at one point, Annie, the character, rolls a 1 and she breaks a string, like, twang. And one of them, I don't know who said it around the table, but they said, Annie, are you okay? Are you okay, Annie? Ashton goes into his bedchamber where he normally sleeps and he finds a letter in his room, right? And he opens it up and it's got a familiar wax seal on it. He reads the letter to himself. Taliesin, the person, reads the letter to himself and he puts it in his pocket and he seems flustered. He seems flustered and says, we got to go find Efford. Efford is someone that lives 5 minutes away. So in this kind of tangle of nets, they find this nest-like structure where Efford lives. Efford the Fallen. He is a bird-style character. I forget the name of what they're called, the bird people in this campaign, but he's like an elderly bird person. Extremely creepy. Creep vibes times 100. Do not talk to this person. I am so genuinely frightened of this person. They ask Efford a bunch of questions, including, hey, do you know anything about Broomstone being smuggled out of the city? But Efford doesn't know much about it. And Fern has a little moment saying, hey, you remind me of a friend of mine, Dr. Nesbit, who was a bird that I named. Look, overall, talking to Efford did not advance the cause at all, but it did give me this kind of vibe. This is exactly what Efford was like.
I had to beat them to death with their own shoes.
So creepy. Oof, 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 oof. So Imogen asks, hey, Ashton, can I take a look at that letter that you wrote? They do rollies off against each other. They both roll a 17, which I don't know exactly what that means. If you tie, what happens? Who knows? But Ashton, like Taliesin at the table, pulls out the prop letter and a black marker and starts redacting information in the letter before handing it off to Laura to read. And the only words that are legible after he's crossed out so many words in this letter is, I have an 8 when you are ready. I have like a numeral 8. I have an 8 when you are ready, which functionally means nothing. So that is a mystery to me. Next, the party goes to their patron, Lord Estros, and they do the same thing they do whenever they go anywhere, is they tell the person that they go to visit literally everything. Hey, we did this, we did this, we did this. So they do that to Lord Estros. Great, cool. He gives them a mission. He says, look, I do have a little bit of work from you. The Dreamscape Theatre, which is the area that Annie, the half-orc, was auditioning for, the Dreamscape Theatre, people are going missing from there. Like at least 4 people have gone missing in the last few months. And the wardens, the guards of this town, they have tried to try and solve it. They've tried, But of course they've come up with nothing. I think that this Lord Esros character very much believes in vigilante justice. But nothing's come up, so you should look into it, right? And he says the Dreamscape Theatre is a place that you can get into if you have enough money. You know, you're not going to get locked out of it because of prestige. It's about money. Very importantly here, Imogen asks Lord Esros, hey, how have you come along coming up with that recommendation so that we can get into the Starlight Conservatory, which is a college that her and Lordna are trying to get into to learn more about the nature of their sorceress origins. And Lord Esros seems to say, look, hey, we're making progress. I will get you the recommendation, even though you haven't signed a contract with me yet. I'll make sure that happens. So he's going to pursue that independently. The party then decide, for some reason, to go to Shadonna's house. Now, Shadonna is the old lady that Lordna and Imogen were staying with. You know, she's just a friendly old lady staying at a place called the Windowed Wall. Now, not a lot happens here. We learn that Shadonna, this old lady, was an artist, like a potter, and she sells pottery to like all kinds of people. And we learned that her husband was a warden. None of this is helpful. None of this is helpful to the party's cause, but there is a good couple of scenes here that happens. Aurum reveals that a number of years ago, there was an attack made on the seat of power where he was from, which is the Ashari, the Air Ashari. Now, it was a unique attack. The attack came from out of nowhere and it disappeared almost before it started. A few of the assailants were defeated, but they evaporated. They melted before their very eyes. Now, this was 5 or 6 years ago, and it left more questions than anything else. But that's about as much as he's known about it for years. However, and here's where it gets tricky, a friend of the Anger said that the attack that happened on House Luminous was somehow similar to the attack on the Ashari. So the party's going to go investigate these disappearances at the Dream Theatre. Like, this is their only lead for any kind of work, so I guess that's what they're doing. So the party goes to the Dream Theatre, and at the start, they float the idea of infiltrating there by getting Robbie, Dorian, right, Dorian the Bard, to pretend or to audition and actually try and perform there. Which, man, I love that idea, and I'm so sad that they didn't pursue it. But what happens is Fern goes up to the ticket box to purchase tickets, and Robbie walks up. Oh my God, Robbie. Okay. Dorian the Bard walks up and bribes this person, gives them 10 platinum coins. 10 platinum coins. That's 100 gold. Okay, that's a lot of money. In the way that I imagine D&D money, I've always thought that 1 copper equals 1 real world dollar. So imagine the buying power of $1. That's what a copper is. That means that Dorian just gave this person $10,000. Insane. Fern, of course, being the good Samaritan that she is, pickpockets the person that Dorian paid and manages to get 6 platinum back, which is, in my imagination, $6,000. So the party goes to their box seat, which they've grandiosely purchased, right, to go see this performance. An attendant comes up and says, hey, there's somebody here that has recognized you, Dorian, Mr. Bard, and would like to meet you. Now, he's not permitted to come up here because this is a restricted area, but if you could come down and meet this patron, that would be great. So Dorian goes out alone. Right, goes out alone to go meet this patron. Ashton gives Dorian one of the sending stones that they have so they can communicate if things go super duper wacky wild. And things go a little bit wild. As Dorian is walking down the stairs, he's accosted. He's grabbed by someone grabbing the plume of his shirt, and they go, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And Dorian says, "Oh, I'm just here to see the show. I'm just here to see the show." But then he recognizes the person. It's Cyrus Wyvernwind. It's his brother. Now, I will remind you that earlier Dorian revealed, look, I am the second in line, I'm second heir to this wealthy family. So I believe that this would probably be the first heir, the next in line to receive whatever benefits this family gets. And Dorian asks, what about Mum? What about Dad? What are you doing here? And his brother says, I followed your lead. Now, this is clearly a setup of how we're going to get Robbie to leave the show, because he's a guest, right? Dorian is going to leave the party eventually. It's probably going to be because of Cyrus. When Dorian returns to the box where the other party members are sitting, he lies to them and says, look, it was just somebody that recognized me from a previous performance and they wanted to pay the respects and ask if I was performing tonight. And nobody rolls inside on it, of course not, because they all know that Robbie has to leave eventually. And that's where the episode finishes. Oh my goodness. Okay, there are a few juicy bits in this, aren't there? There are a few juicy bits. Now, let me remind you that I am giving away a Twitch subscription to the Critical Role Twitch channel in this video. Now, the way that you can win this is I need you to tell me your Twitch account name in your comment. And when you leave a comment, let's talk about one of these things, because I got some thoughts. What is the group gonna be called? Every good adventuring party has a name, right? The Mighty Nine, Vox Machina. What's this party gonna be called? Laudna, throughout this episode, asked a few people, hey, when you see us, what's the first word that pops into your mind? So she asked the Corsairs, and they said trouble. She asked Lord Estros, and he said eclectic. She asked the old lady, I forget her name, and she said sweet. But they were also floating the idea of, hey, we want to pay respects to Bertrand Bell, who brought us together, so we want the name to have Bell in there somewhere. So with the words trouble, eclectic, sweet, and Bell, there's 4, what do you think that the name of this party will be? And remember to leave the name of your Twitch account so that if you win, if you leave the best comment, then I can give you a subscription to the Twitch channel. Another question for you. Literally the juiciest bit of this whole episode, in my opinion, was Laudna's backstory. Delilah Briarwood. Back from the dead? Question mark, question mark, question mark? Or never dead at all? Do we think this voice that she's hearing in her head is some kind of like, she's an entity out there, Delilah's an entity out there in the world and projecting her voice into her head? Or is she like a ghost, something immaterial now that is, I don't know, possessing her in some way? Here's my question. Does Delilah exist out in the world with a physical form? Or is she a ghost? Later in this campaign, are we going to get a Lich Lady? Oh, that would be so fun. I would love to see Delilah Briarwood come back as a Lich. Last question, Fresh Cut Grass, okay? He had a moment where he went to the he glitched out, right? He couldn't access those memories anymore. Now, there's definitely something sinister here because that's what drama is. It would be undramatic for this to be anything other than sinister. I believe that Fresh Cut Grass has false memories, okay? Some kind of false memories. And even the things that he remembers about Dancer, they're probably not true. I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised if this Dancer character ends up being super unethical, super duper shady, and all of Fresh Cut Grass's memories of this person are false. I don't know. Now, I don't really have a question here, but I just want to know, what do you think about the nature of Fresh Cut Grass's backstory and how much do you trust it? Like, what's your wild theories here? Because if you get it right, if you guess right, if you go out like, hey, this is what I think is up with Dancer in Fresh Cut Grass's history, and you leave a comment about it, then you've locked it in. You've locked it in, and people can point back and go, hey, look at this person. They got it right way back in the day. They called it. What a genius. But don't forget to leave your Twitch name. So if you win, I can gift you the Twitch subscription to the Critical Role channel. Everybody, hey, that was the Critical Role video. Super fun, super fun. All these names down here, these are my patrons. Thank you so much for keeping the lights on, patrons. I really appreciate your support. It's so helpful. So helpful. Coming up, we've got more videos about Storm King Thunder. We've got a podcast coming up with Lou Boffin, Luna. Really looking forward to that. But if you want to help support the channel and be a cool patron, I would really appreciate it. Otherwise, click one of these videos off to the right. And otherwise, I'll just see you later. Hey, thank you so much for watching. You are an absolute legend.